Hi, welcome to another episode of Wine 101 on the Road. This is Scott Sullivan, and we're at Page Springs Cellars and Vineyard here in beautiful Page Springs near Cornville, Arizona. I'm standing next to assistant winemaker Matt Rolane, and he's going to welcome us here and tell us a little about what's going on.
Well, March this year is a little bit interesting. We're going along with our normal procedures and processes in the cellar. I'm doing racking and some blending of our whites and reds right now, but there's a little bit of anticipation with the warm winter and warm spring we're having. So we're trying to push things ahead a little bit quicker this year as far as bottling and getting some preparations done for our next harvest, which, you know, we're still months away, but we really got to start preparing now.
A lot of the people that are viewing are from Arizona, and they are aware that we've had a relatively dry and warm winter, unseasonable. So what's on the lineup for bottling? What's ready to be bottled right now? People are familiar with the harvest time of year, but a lot of people aren't quite exactly comfortable with what goes on in the off season, so to speak, when the plants are dormant.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, because when I first got into the winemaking business, I came from a field that was completely different, so I had no idea what anybody did previous or after the harvest. There's so much to do, though. We do racking, which is once the wine actually goes to barrel, there's all this sediment that will settle out, and we have to get all that out of the barrel, so we clean the barrels. And on top of that, we're doing blending. We're putting some of our bigger blends together. Things like, if you're familiar with Page Springs, we have our Barrio, which is our biggest blend. We have Mule's Mistake, we have Familia. All of these things have to be thought about earlier in the year so we can start putting them together, have them homogenize and come together in a happy way. As far as today, currently, we're just getting prepared for our white bottling, which is coming up in the next few weeks or so. So we're going to be ordering glass and cork and other materials. We're going to be filtering our whites. Typically all our white wines are filtered for stability, just to make sure there's nothing funny going to happen in bottle once they get there. General cellar maintenance, and again, the list kind of goes on, and there's just so much more to it that I never realized and I never thought about.
Thank you very much. We've got some more treats for you here at Page Springs, so stay tuned and we'll be right back. Hello again, and we're still here at Page Springs, and we're enjoying a wonderful afternoon, and we have a treat. In my estimation, one of the pioneers of Arizona winemaking, seriously. One of the most future thinking and forward people in the business in Arizona. Eric Glomsky is here, owner, winemaker, just about everything.
Good to see you again, man. Thanks.
Thank you for having us, really. So, Eric, there's some people that don't know about Page Springs, and I don't know who they are. I'm hoping they still have television, but I would like to, if you don't mind, tell us kind of the whole story, all the way back to how you got started, where you worked before you decided Arizona.
Okay. Well, I'll try to condense it and give you the Cliff Notes version. In a nutshell, I was born in Chicago, raised in Boston. I moved out here to go to school. I went to Prescott College over in Prescott and got an undergrad degree in field ecology, actually focused on river ecology. And in my travels along rivers, I would come across old homesteads. You know, so of course, early Anglo settlers, Hispanic settlers would follow rivers because there's water there, and they'd settle. And with the Homestead Act, people would often privatize land, but they not always did. So when I was doing research along rivers, I would come across these old orchards. And sometimes there were pears, apples, almost always apples, quince, once in a blue moon, cherries, and other you know, odd fruits. And I started making wines from them. They were heirloom varieties, and it was kind of neat. I was young, so I'd backpack a bunch of this neat fruit out of these remote sites. And at the time, I had met this older gentleman named Dick Landis in Prescott, who, he's like, let me think about this. He's like 40 years my senior. And he made apple wines, and so I'd bring him these phenomenal apples, and we'd make apple wines together. And I think the day that I became a winemaker was the day that the first apple wine I made from these heirloom apples. We bottled it. About a year later, we opened it up. And I remember opening that bottle and smelling it, and the smell of the wine transported me back to the place where I had harvested the apples from.
Wow, how
So
cool.
it was the first time I realized, I had been kind of approaching the world as a scientist. I was describing plants and measuring things and doing all the things scientists do. All of a sudden, the landscape that I had studied was expressed artistically in this wine. So it opened up, blew the top off my world, and gave me a whole new perspective on the landscape. And I loved that I had this opportunity to become an artist, not necessarily a painter per se.
Sure.
People we're such a visual culture, but I could express landscapes through liquids. And from there on, I was teaching at the college level at that time. I started taking my fall semesters off and driving out to California and volunteering at wineries out there. Got lucky enough to land myself a job in the Santa Cruz Mountains at a place called David Bruce. A pretty noteworthy Pinot Noir producer. Beautiful place. Worked my way up from quote-unquote cellar rat to winemaker at David Bruce. David was nice enough to pay for classes at UC Davis, one of the kind of preeminent enology and viticulture programs in our country. And yet, I always wanted to come back to Arizona. And this was a place, even though I wasn't born here, because I went to school here and I kind of woke up as a human being, Arizona is always a place that kind of felt like home to me. And the idea of making wines, not in California, not being just another California winemaker, the idea of being a pioneer here and growing grapes that express a place that was really important to me personally always seemed like a no-brainer. So that's the nutshell. And started, actually John Marcus, one of my predecessors, interesting guy. He had a winery called Echo Canyon prior to Page Springs Cellars being open. John was actually one of Jack Kevorkian's attorneys.
Oh, wow.
Back in the day. Interesting, colorful story of his own. And, I worked at John's for about a year and a half, and I said, look, I'll help you get started, but I'm going to take off and I'm going to go do my own thing soon, and that's where we're sitting right now. So, and interestingly, there's a river right below us here, Oak Creek.
Sure. I
had actually hiked this river in a previous life for one of my jobs, and I remember looking up in this field, which used to just be horses, and I remember going, God, that's the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my life. And here I was years later, like a decade later, in the same spot, going, God, I wonder if I could buy this and plant grapes on it.
Wow.
And that was 10 years ago. So this is our 10th anniversary this year.
Well, congratulations.
So that's the Cliff Notes version of it.
What grapes did you plant first?
Okay. Well, and I did actually look at a bunch of different sites other than this one, and there wwere a lot of things I was trying to balance: climate, soils, proximity to a cultural center where I felt like I could sell the wines. Sedona is a great example. Some of my world travels led me to believe that this area had a lot of similarities with the south of France, kind of northern Spain, parts of Italy. And I chose grapes that were grown in the south of France in the Rhone Valley primarily. So Syrah, Petit Syrah, Grenache, and Mourvedre, or Mataro, were my first grapes planted here. And we've learned a lot of things since we first planted. In fact, like the bottom of this field, we originally planted grapes down there thinking that we'd benefit from the coolness of the river and such, and the soils down there. Well, we did, but unfortunately too much. So much cold air drains down Oak Creek from Flagstaff that the vines in the bottom field kept getting frosted every year. And in fact, winter temperatures sometimes were so low that it would kill the vines in the wintertime. You'd be amazed. 10 feet, when you're 10 feet higher here, where we're sitting now versus the bottom of the field, it can be 15 degrees difference.
Wow.
Because of the way cold air sinks and settles down there. So Syrah and Petit Syrah are still here. Grenache used to be at the bottom of the field, now it's at the top of our parking lot. And all of our new sites are all up in hill slopes around here.
Wow. So of all, in the 10 years, what do you think right now is the grape that is doing? I know that Arizona has a million different little climates of their own, but what's the big winner right now? What's Syrah, or is it Tempranillo?
I wish it would. I'd like to say it was Syrah, but I think I've proven myself wrong. Problem with Syrah is that the two biggest factors that come into play, prior to even considering quality, is the ability to actually just grow the grapes well. Okay, and spring frost and actually late summer monsoon rains are the two biggest factors that affect the quality of our grapes. spring frost, you know, if you get frosted, you just don't get any grapes. So that obviously that's a factor. But grape varietals that are that their skins are too thin on, or if the clusters are too tight, monsoons damage them and lead to rot problems. And Syrah, unfortunately, tends to be a fairly tightly clustered grape. And so in dry years, we make phenomenal Syrahs, but we don't make them consistently because we get monsoons. And if the monsoons are late, in particular, if they push into September, which they did last year, it's just devastating. And we probably dropped half of our Syrah on the ground here because of rot. So having said that, and it's wildly variable, I actually think Mourvedre or Mataro, it's pronounced a million different ways. Mourvedre, Mataro, Monastrell in Spain. It's an interesting grape because it's thick-skinned and it comes out really late. So we never get frosted in the spring, and it ripens early enough that it's, you know, not so late that it's not going to happen for us. So Mourvedre is exciting to me. I think I don't have a lot of experience with Tempranillo, honestly. Strangely, and you probably won't see me planting a lot of it, I actually think Cabernet Sauvignon is a great grape for Arizona. Very thick-skinned, and the berries are very small, so there's tons of airspace between them. So if it rains, they dry out really quickly and they don't get rot. So Cab, I think we'll probably see more of over time. Let's see, Aglianico, which is a southern Italian varietal from Campania. I think Aglianico shows a lot of promise as well. I think Montepulciano from Italy does. I'd like to say Sangiovese because I love Sangiovese, but I think Sangiovese is a problem. I think it's early, so it gets frosted, and it's slightly rot prone too, a lot like Syrah. You know, in the red world, Mourvedre, Aglianico, and Cab Sauv, I think, are all good grapes. In the white world, I still think Malvasia is a pretty good grape for us. I wish it were Viognier, but Viognier is super early and gets frosted all the time. Roussanne, which is a central Rhone grape, I think has a lot of promise because it comes out later. It's fairly rot resistant, thick-skinned, and ripens nicely too. So, and you know, you ask me 10 years from now, I might be telling you something different.
No, but that's good because it's all, you're the human experiment. You're the guinea pig that's doing all the work to provide good wines for us.
Right.
So it's really nice.
And most of the failures are kind of behind curtains, so you guys don't see what goes on.
You have to have a wine tasting of the really bad wine. That would be interesting. But so you started here, and then you got involved with a lot of product from the southern part of the state in Cochise County and such.
Yeah, I mean, number one, early on, we were waiting for our vineyards to mature, so we bought grapes from all over the state. We even brought some grapes in from Paso Robles and Napa, Sonoma, but ultimately we wanted to farm our own grapes, and certainly we wanted to be an Arizona brand. Having said that, originally Dos Cabezas, which is now Arizona Stronghold, we bought grapes from, and then we actually, in collaboration with Maynard Keenan, we ended up purchasing Dos Cabezas and renaming it Arizona Stronghold. Even though Stronghold was its own brand, there was a surplus of grapes from there, so Maynard's brand, Caduceus, would buy grapes from our joint project Stronghold, and Page Springs would do the same. So Wilcox and that vineyard, which was at the time the largest vineyard in the state, was a pretty important factor in our development. And then over time, as we planted more vineyards, we started weaning ourselves off of other sources of fruit. But since, originally we thought we were going to be 100% estate-grown wines, but we kind of changed our mind largely just for hedging, to manage agricultural risk. So the number of acres we have planted right now at full production will constitute about 75 to 80% of our production, and we're probably always going to source another 20 to 25% from other Arizona vineyards, just so, if we get hammered by frost here one year, we have other resources to pull upon. Right now, we're buying. The neat thing is there's other new growers. We're buying from about 3 other vineyards in the state and then producing the rest all here.
Wow. So that's a good point. You're buying from other growers. When you started, how many growers were there? I mean, reputable growers.
There was one person to buy. Yeah, and actually now, we have some choices, which is really nice. And generally speaking, we like to work with growers that want to have a true relationship. They're on the ground all the time, and they have a lot of, they're learning quickly, and they're connected with that place in the earth, and we've got some experience, and we also know that we want our grapes to be grown, at least within reason, a certain way, given the wine style we want. And so we generally look for collaborative relationships where we can give them input on growing, and they can give us a bunch of feedback, and we kind of work together. And it's almost like we're co-managing the vineyard together. And so and luckily, I guess, we have enough of a reputation now that growers want to work with us because they'd like to see their vineyard on one of our labels.
Sure.
So it's a real benefit. And again, we like to work with people who want to learn together with us.
And so you've been here from pretty much the beginning. What do you say the quality of the fruit is?
Right.
Within reason, obviously, when they're new, but after a few years, how do you think that's improved in the state of Arizona?
I think it's improving a lot, and I think the wines in the state have improved a lot. You know, our grapes have improved so much, sometimes with the simplest little things. I'll give you an example. This Syrah here, which of course is dormant right now, about to come out of dormancy. Can you see these little cross arms? There's a longer one at the top and then a smaller one there.
Mm-hmm.
Because I put those two little brackets on there and spread those wires out, we picked these grapes 2 weeks earlier on average now. And they're darker and have more tannin and more flavor, okay? Because what we discovered is that when those brackets weren't there, the wires were just sitting in that main post,
mm-hmm.
and the canopy was a sandwich like about that wide, and all the upper leaves were shading the lower leaves, so that the vines were very inefficient photosynthetically.
Mm-hmm.
Now that you open it up a little bit and the sun gets down in the canopy, there's so much more leaf surface that gets direct sun that the vines are more efficient, and we find we ripen things better, and they're producing healthier, darker grapes. So that took us a week to put all these in, and bam, the wine style here went from a light, generally too low in alcohol wine, with not a lot of color and flavor, to something now that is like almost too dark. And I'm going, now I need to actually figure out a way to kind of lure it back in a little bit, because I feel like I went too far. But you'd be amazed at how many little things like that, decisions that you make in the vineyard, can just completely change the style of your wine. And everybody thinks it's all about barrels and crushing stuff and stuff that happens in the winery, but most of it happens out here.
That's great. I mean, I can attest to it. I was coming here, and as an Arizonan, you know, you want to come here and support wines, but it was a little rugged at first, you know. 10 or 15 years ago, it was a little tough, and now you come in and it's like, oh my goodness, there's some tremendous stuff.
And I guess I didn't really answer your question, but the point being is that 10 years have passed, and we've all learned things like this, and we teach them to each other.
Yeah.
Todd Bostock does something down at Dos Cabezas, and we have a conversation. I'm like, oh, I better try that. Or I say, hey, by the way, you ought to try putting some cross arms in, maybe half of one block, and then compare that half to the other half. And there's enough of that kind of collaborative conversation going on, where we really are an industry trying to further ourselves collectively rather than individually. And I would say, I mean, with all due respect to all my predecessors, I like the wines coming out of this state way more than I did 10 years ago.
Yeah, amen. No doubt. I have a couple quick questions for you, and one of them, this is a little more off the cuff. So if you had to go in the barrel, there was a fire, let's say, and you had one barrel to grab, is there a pet in there that you really need to save?
I like the way you put that. Yeah, you know, honestly, we've been trying to think of, it's our 10th anniversary. What one wine can we bottle that we're most proud of to put our 10th anniversary label on this year? And it actually comes from the new vineyard we've just planted across here in these hills, with a little bit from a new vineyard over here. And so this vineyard over here is called Dos Padres, because it's actually owned. It was financed by my two fathers, my stepfather and my father. Okay, and there's a block of Syrah over there, and it's actually a clone of Syrah that we sought out from France that has looser clusters. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Furthermore, we found that it's a little breezier up there, and so we think we can get away with growing Syrah up there. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't plant it down here again. Having said that, that's a very young vineyard. We got the first crop off it this last year. Okay. And then over in this other vineyard over here called House Mountain, which is a joint project between us and a ranch owner over here, the Dancing Apache Ranch, the Pesnick family. There's a little block of a red grape called Toraldigo, which is a northern Italian grape, which tends to be very dark, almost petite Syrah-like. Well, this blend, single barrel, is all we made. 80% Syrah from Dos Padres, from that special clone, 20% Terral to go, and it's possibly, what seems like maybe the best wine we've ever produced here. And,
wow.
And it's really encouraging because you spend a ton of money planting 9 acres over here, and you don't know whether the grapes are going to be good at all. You hope.
Sure.
And that first barrel we made off, it's really exciting. We could technically just call it Syrah because it has to be 75% or higher. We're not sure yet, but it'll probably be called Dos Padres. We'll probably give it a name. We'll probably say 80% Syrah, 20% Terral to go. Yeah.
Great. That's cool. That's cool.
Bottling, yeah.
All right, I got one more question for him, and this is what I'm trying to do this with the people that we talk to as we're going down the road here, and that is a lot of the people that watch always are interested in what wine goes with what food and so forth. And I thought, it's subjective. However, you're in this and you do this every day and you live this and your passion shows. And so if you had one bottle, and it doesn't have to be, the same thing every day, but for today, if you had one bottle of wine, white or red, and one dish, appetizer to main dish, doesn't matter. What do you think? A bottle and something that you can tell these people that they would really enjoy.
My stock evasive answer to this is this Far Side comic. I don't know if you've ever seen this. There's these two bears sitting next to a tree, and there's a broken fishing pole, and there's like a bent 30-06, or a shotgun or something, and the bears have something they're chewing on, and one bear looks at the other bear and goes, "Is it white with hunter or white with fisherman?" You started off with the subjectivity. I actually really do believe in that because everybody is so different, and et cetera, et cetera. I made a statement just yesterday. I had a group of volunteers at Arizona Strongholds who were bottling, and somebody asked me if I was a vegetarian, and I said, no, that would be a sin. I'm a red winemaker, because I really do think red wines are great with meats of all kinds. And in fact, the folks who we have this joint project over here, the Pesniks, have this, they produce some of the top beef for like AJ's Markets and stuff, and I trade them Mourvedre for these big, beautiful grade A organic, or they call them prime organic New Yorks, and they age them and we cook them over here, and that with a classic Rhone blend like our El Serrano, where it has a little bit of the pepper in the blend and some of the dark fruits and the tannins. I just think so. I think our El Serrano, which is it's Syrah, Petit Syrah, Mourvedre, and New Yorks is to me pretty much a slice of heaven. Having said that, my wife would probably say champagne and raw oysters, which I tend to agree that she's a little more passionate about raw oysters than myself. But it's neat because when you do champagne and raw oysters, it's like the good side of drinking the ocean. Not the body surfing, got tumbled by a wave and sand in your eyes. But it's, again, to me, the things that I love about wine and are also the things I love about wine and food. Are they evocative of something important in my life? Does it bring back a great memory? Does it remind me of a place? Mm-hmm. One of my mentors once said, if you have a great wine and food pairing, you crave the next bite where you get to slosh that wine in over it, But again, I also think that's it. Like so many people say, oh, chocolate and champagne. I think chocolate and champagne is horrible together. Whenever I have anything sweet with champagne tastes bitter to me, So that's just me. Chocolate-covered strawberries and champagne, I think, is one of the most foul things I could put in my mouth. But then again, I'd say I'll do an oyster before that, and people are going to go, "Are you crazy? Oysters over chocolate and strawberries?"
No. Well, I got one more thing. As you keep talking, it just brings up so many things. The legislation that's going on in the state is changing. It's becoming a little more contemporary. And one of the things that I find goofy is the inability for you to fortify a wine to make a port. And so, how is that changing? Are you able to do that now?
Well, actually, no. We can fortify up to a certain level. What we can't do is create any brandies or grappas of our own and ever drink or sell those individually. So we can have brandies, quote unquote, or distillates on site, but the only place they can go is in a wine. So among other things in the legislature right now, we're trying to get this grappa bill passed, and what we're really trying to do is get the grappa bill in a big liquor omnibus bill, with the idea that we could take our waste products from our
Sure.
business. So, grappa is essentially using spent grape skins that still have alcohol in them, almost like coffee grounds. And you put them in the still, you percolate hot water through them, and you extract the essence from them. That's grappa. Brandy is distilled wine, and there's plenty of batches that go bad for whatever reason. Like a great example, the thing that got us interested in it is probably one of our most valuable vineyards and important vineyards, Colibri, which is down in the Chiricahuas, sat right in the middle of a several 100,000-acre wildfire, and so these grapes hung there, just getting basically smoked, and all the wines we made from them, what would have had this street value of $400,000-$500,000, were all so smoke tainted. Everyone tasted like barbecue, and so we distilled it instead. And the nature of distillation is that it works with the variable volatility of the different components. So as you heat it up, different things come off, and we watched it, and there's the smoke, boom, that goes down into the drain, and then the smoke's gone, now we'll kick it back in. So we were able to produce these beautiful brandies that don't have a smokiness to them. Actually, one of them we left a little smoke, thinking we'd do something kind of single malty.
Yeah.
Ended up kind of tasting like a mezcal, but then we have all this beautiful brandy in here, but we can't do anything with it except for pour it into and make ports. But honestly, this stuff has, to me, a much greater kind of destiny than.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, and these are really fine brandies that could stand up to cognacs and such. If after 5-10 years, I could put them in a bottle. They already have a beautiful butterscotch flavor and color. So the goal would be to pass a law that allows us to produce distillates from our own production and sell them at least on site here, but right now we can't do any of that. So my hope would be, maybe we could even distribute them too, beyond our tasting room. But the neat thing is we could turn things that are a waste stream here into a saleable product. It's a totally unexplored niche economically.
That's great. Well, I've just been overwhelmed and intrigued here. This is great. I've been coming here pretty much since the beginning, and if you guys haven't been out here, you need to come, because this is the premier. And I got to tell you, in the world of Arizona wine, Eric Glomsky, you are a hero, and we definitely appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for talking.
Thank you again very much for watching. Make sure you watch Access 13, and we look forward to seeing you down the road.